Good morning, y'all. This is our Awakening and Conscious Living podcast. My name's Bill, and this is
I'm Luisa.
Luisa. Today we are talking about spiritual awakening, right?
Yes, we're going to talk about our journeys, my story of my spiritual awakening, or at least our first spiritual awakening, because as we've talked about,
We actually need to talk about, are there multiple awakenings? But
yes,
yes.
yes, yeah, we'll both tell our stories, um, and talk about whether there are other awakenings, and really take it from there. Just sort of sharing for people who may be going through it, or for people who may not necessarily understand what it looks like when you get started, and when Google tells you that you have schizophrenia, that it's not true. So yeah, welcome to another episode.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start with a quick story, but this is about more unfolding intuition and kind of when you get into the flow. Okay. So this picture above me, can you see it?
Yes, it looks hand painted.
It is hand painted.
It's
Okay.
beautiful.
It's a pretty big picture. And you see that, you know, the goldfish, it's kind of a fantasy inside I guess that's the moon coming up. I'm not sure. Anyway, uh, I used to drive to work. I don't drive to work anymore. I work right here. Uh, and every morning on my way to work, I would pass that picture, and it was in a glass window of an old warehouse. And the way I went home or way I came to work, I was 2 lanes away from it. And then the picture was in the building, on the other edge of the sidewalk. One morning I started noticing it. And so every morning I would look at it and so I'm driving to work, right? And it's in downtown. So it was like the end of my ride, and I was on a main street, First Avenue, going like, 20, 30 miles an hour. So I could kind of look at it for a second. One day I asked one of my friends that was in the art world, I said, there was a phone number on the front. Will you call that place and see if that picture's for sale? Because it was left over from what Birmingham calls their Art Walk Festival.
Okay, yeah.
And some of the pictures just ended up staying in the windows. So anyway, she called the guy, got me a price, and I said, "Yeah, well, tell that guy to bring it down to the office." And so this guy brings it down to the office, and I'm looking at it. If you see real closely, maybe yes, there you go. That fish, see the little light coming out of the bottom?
Yeah.
That is a hot air balloon basket. And so that fish is actually not a fantasy. Well, it is a fantasy, but it's a hot air balloon. Now, I was a hot air balloon pilot at the time, right? And I never got within 40 feet of that. I could have never seen that basket. And I thought that that was just funny and beautiful.
Oh, I feel it. I feel it.
Isn't that
And
crazy?
that is so crazy. And it speaks to, when you're in tune with yourself, with that intuition, it's crazy the things and how they happen because I I've been seeing this saying around the internet that says something about like God made a way. And it's like there are some things that there is just no other explanation. Like you would have never seen from that far, you could have never seen that. How
Right.
symbolic. And then it speaks to your spiritual journey, right? Like to your not only the hot air balloon, but the fact that it's a light, also you being a light worker, right? Like,
Oh, I didn't even think about that part.
I think spiritual awakening is, in most of basic terms, is becoming aware of the fact that we are spiritual beings or souls having a human experience. Becoming aware of that is what a spiritual awakening is in essence. I think everything else builds down and grows from that foundation. Having been in a religious background, having grown up in a religious background, the God was outside of me and the God was external. And I was looking for the God in all these places. I could not find him. Could not find him. So I think that when I finally realized what I really am and how that for me, that understanding of I'm a spiritual being, I'm a soul having a human experience, that really shaped how I maneuver the world, how I see the world, and how I interact and like flow through this world. And I think that that's what spiritual awakening is. The essence and foundation is realizing that this isn't everything. Like, this is a very small piece of my whole story as a soul. And then from there, kind of everything that trickles down, which is, what we do on this podcast, share about conscious living and share
Right.
about becoming more aware and just realizing the truth, what I call what is true to me at least, um, of what our reality and our experience is meant to be on this planet at this time.
That's yeah. And I would go along with all that. And I probably get a little more ethereal. Uh, but I do love that term, being that we're not humans having a spiritual experience, but spirits having a human experience, which is Pierre uh, Teilhard de Chardin, who was a French philosopher, Jesuit, archaeologist, amazing man. He coined that term, I don't know, 75 years ago or something, or maybe longer. Um, but I like to think about like the energy, the ethereal nature. Like if we weren't in bodies, we'd be spirits, right?
Mhm.
And if we are sitting in, I'm getting pretty tired of the word God too. If we're sitting in God consciousness and we can talk telepathically, we can zoom here. I mean, it literally says in the Bible, we like spark through the blackness or through the universe, where these sparks, these divine sparks. And so, and you've got knowledge of everything, right? You're in the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
Everything is perfect. You have access to all of consciousness, per se, maybe. Um, and now you take this beautiful awareness and you put it in a body, and then we cover it up with, oh, these are the rules, and this is what you've got to believe. But once you start to awaken and you feel the power of your spirit, you go, OMG.
Yeah.
And that's the way I think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that happens in a recycle for me that I'm sort of in the middle of is, I'll say again, I don't know. I think like you, I just don't words are I'm like, I have to use them, but I don't always love them. We're so powerful. And I think that when you say that in a three and you hear that from a 3D perspective, we're not one percenters, but we are so powerful. Like, we each individual being, the power that we have is it's infinite. Like, we are
Yeah.
powerful, infinite, beings. And you once you realize that, when you have that feeling of what you just shared, it's like, for me, there was this hit of like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so powerful." Like,
So, so tell us specifically about your experience.
so my experience all starts with I'll start with my like the big awakening, the actually changed the trajectory of my life. So it all started with my divorce. And I had been married for Yay!
Lots of lots of good things start with things that are difficult,
Yes,
right?
usually big, huge things. Somebody passing away, divorce, loss of a child, things like that. Unfortunately, it's
I'm going to keep interrupting you. We're breaking an old pattern, aren't we?
we are.
That's so that's what happens. You're
Yes,
breaking old patterns, and those are hard. And then you have to step into the new, which is unfamiliar.
and usually generational patterns. Like, for me,
Absolutely.
I know this is like ancestral. This is like my grandmothers and my aunts and cousins and all of us down the line, all of us women who felt like we needed to be with a man to become something, to be worth something, to have a spot in society. And this is true for a lot of us 3D in the earth right now for a lot. So it started with my divorce. My husband of 10 years, it was 10 years. That year would have been our 11-year wedding anniversary. And he walked in from a solo trip that he had been going on now for a little while. Um, and he says, "Can I talk to you in the backyard?" Because the kids, it was like dinner time and the kids were sitting in the living room. And he sits me down and he says, "I'm 75% out. The only 25% that I have left in this is to make sure that you don't ruin everything that we've built."
Wow.
Those were his words. I will never forget them. And the reason that I won't forget them, which it kind of plays a part in this story, is because I felt in that moment like this person doesn't actually really know me. To think that I would destroy what I've built for my children, what the fuck? Like, that was literally my reaction. And anyway, it was not that easy for me to let go. And I was just thinking in the shower, like, people don't feel insulted enough sometimes. And that was me in that moment. I feel like I was not insulted enough. Like, I should have been angrier. I should have been a freaking cunt and just said it how it needed to be said in that moment. But that wasn't me. I was very weak and I did not have any power. That was in February. And then about March, as he kind of lived in and out of the house, I started to have this alone time more consistently. And I started to, for the first time, some like episode came up because I would spend more time alone. So I would just find different places in the house where he wasn't at, if he was there, and just listen to things that I wouldn't have dared listen to before because I would have felt judged by him.
Oh, really? That's
Oh, yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't there were so many things spiritually that I was attracted to, but he wasn't into any of that whatsoever. He judged people very harshly for being spiritual in any kind or religious in any kind sort of way. And so I started doing that while he was around. And one day in March toward April, I was laying in a hammock in my backyard and that video came up. And then what started to happen was that all of these spirituality videos kept coming up. And so I created a playlist of them. I was like, I just enjoy listening to this. And I created a playlist and started to listen to them. And then this is where the main shift happened. So after listening to those spirituality videos, pay attention. I have really, really curly hair. Like my hair's like this short. This is straightened, blow dried, flat ironed, all the things. But my really curly hair, I started noticing in the shower that they were taking number shapes. And I had been noticing that for a while, but I was like, of course my hair is going to take a shape. It's really curly. It's not just going to be straight. My hair's not straight. And my shower was really small, but they were all over the place and they were all numbers. Every time that my hair would end up in the shower, I just noticed them being numbers. And one day, because
It's
he
great.
wasn't there, is so crazy.
Never heard this before.
Yeah, I haven't shared this much. I actually don't know if I've shared this publicly ever. This might be the first time. But ever one day, because I stepped out of the shower and instead of going immediately to get ready like I would have, I walked over to my computer and I was like, numbers in the shower. And angel numbers came up.
Okay.
And I was like, "Oh my god." So then from that day forward, I got a little creeped out that day. I was because it felt big. It really felt overwhelmingly big. Like I knew that whatever this was going to turn me into, whatever direction I was going to go into from that point, it was going to I'd never experienced it. And I was alone. I didn't talk to anybody. He and my kids were like my whole world aside from my brother who lived nearby at that time.
So I had a question. When you say it felt big, what does that exactly mean?
So it
Put that into a felt sense for us.
was almost like the anxiety was coming out of my chest, and I knew that I hadn't felt all of it yet.
So the anxiety was leaving your body?
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's very fascinating,
Yeah.
actually, because
And I
we do embody all type of beliefs and feelings and things, and so you were in a state of anxiety for a long time probably, and then the awareness came, right?
Yep. Yep. And I started to feel that anxiety, and I didn't have the words at that time. I didn't know what it was.
Sure.
But yes, I was in a state of anxiety. I was 60 pounds heavier than I am right now at that time. So the way I was in that anxiety that I had been living in it was emotional eating. I took that anxiety to food. Um, I,
I I'm gonna interrupt you real quick. I actually think that, and I have no way to prove this, but I think that some people carry fat to protect themselves.
Yeah.
It's another layer that keeps you one step away from the world.
So I believe that too, based on my own experience, because I was 80 pounds overweight at that time. Well, 60 heavier than I am now, but 80 pounds overweight. And that I feel like that's all it was. It was me protecting myself, and I know this is going to sound horrible, but it was me protecting myself from the world, and especially from the environment that I lived in, because I did not feel safe, but I wouldn't
That's
let that surface.
that's the word. You didn't feel safe,
I did
right?
not feel safe. I
Did
did
not
not
feel
feel safe.
safe in the world.
I did not. I was afraid to be seen, for who I was. Here I am. Um, I was afraid to have any dreams. I didn't have any dreams. I put everything that I ever wanted. It was just like I just put it in a box and was like, that's just never gonna happen. It's just
Oh,
not gonna be a possibility for me, period. And I navigated the world through whatever my husband wanted to do because I had told myself that that was my job. My job was to make sure that he was fulfilled. And if you could see
and
my
and
face.
you picked up that belief system
Yep.
through your family, through your culture, from being raised as a woman. You took all, oh, it's gonna make me sad. You took all your goals and desires, which
Mhm.
were natural, that you came to come into this earth to birth, and you put them in a box and put them on the shelf.
Yes, I did. And it was heartbreaking. The angel numbers, and to this day, and this is probably why I've never shared this before because this is really weird, but those angel numbers changed my life because I started to, what I did was after I knew they were angel numbers, I'd get out of the shower and I'd Google whatever angel numbers were and I started to receive messages. And I'll tell you exactly how that works for me because it still works the same way. I will type angel number and whatever number I see and whatever the first message is as to what that angel number means, that's a message that I take as it was sent for me. It is meant for me. It is my spirit guides, my angels communicating with me. And following those angel numbers was, I think I shared with you before, I went into a closet to meditate for 2 minutes and that sort of changed that. Those angel numbers were the directive that told me that I should meditate.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's
It
interesting.
was those angel numbers that I got after in that shower that told me you need, and it doesn't say it like that. It's interpretation. It doesn't, it's not like, "Oh, go meditate." But it'll say
Right.
something, to the effect, and then whatever I interpret it as, I know at this point that these are the messages that are meant for me.
See,
And
and this is all very interesting because, if we're spirits in our bodies and we're ignoring it based off of these rules that we picked up, and now you've got a little signal from the universe, however you want to interpret that, that could be a whole big story, but it tells you to go sit in the quiet. And you use the word knowing, and the word knowing is gnosis, which means knowledge. And so it's when you can get quiet from the fake rules in the outside world,
yeah.
okay? Uh, you go sit in the quiet and you have the knowing that those rules are not really who we are
Yeah.
and not healthy for our generational, society. And that is the trauma.
Yes.
That's the trigger point where you saw that trauma. And from here on down, that is going to be alleviated or at least lessened in your family.
Yeah.
And that reflects the whole world.
Yeah. That has ripples. It has ripple effects.
Huge ripples.
Yeah. And, I'm gonna say this, not to knock my ex-husband, because I believe that we're all doing the best we can with what we know and what we have, but he was the representation of the rules for me. So
Mhm.
he was the reason that I didn't operate in my true nature at that time, right? In a 3D perspective, in the 3D world, not because he was stopping me, not because he was telling me no, but because I didn't feel safe enough around him to do that. So
So you were giving away your power
to him,
to
me,
him.
all of me,
Absolutely.
not him taking it, me giving it. And that's
That's a
important.
that's
Yeah,
a
it's
distinction.
important because for a long time, I was so angry at him until I realized I allowed that. I allowed myself to have him be the representation of how I should live my life. That
Right.
was all me.
But you came about it from a belief system that you was handed down to you through people that you trusted, loved,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. And
Yeah.
especially, I'll say this because I think this could really there's a lot of people in this situation. So I'm Dominican American, first generation. My ex-husband is, white as can be, like blue eyes, tall, 6'2", almost blonde hair, like
Scandinavian.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Like that's him. And for me, part of that inferiority that I felt and that my family supported me in feeling is, well, look at what you've got.
Oh my
Solely that
gosh.
was a huge part of it for me. It's like, look at what you got. And not only is he that white, tall, blue-eyed man, 6'2", but he also makes a shit ton of money and he spends it on you and your kids. And for my family, that was the equivalent of winning the lottery. And I had got that. I just want to share that because I think those things, not that I want to label him as the culprit because he wasn't, but because in a 3D world, I know I'm not the only one that looked at it that way. And I
Oh,
know
sure.
I'm not the only one who's like, "Oh, because of my husband, this, and that." And you're giving them that. You are giving him that. But yeah, that was basically for the most part, like the really beginning of my awakening was those angel numbers then led me to and I anytime we talk about the tarot, um and I grew up to be open. I grew up the tarot is a very big part of Dominican community, but it led me to the tarot. It led me to meditation. It led me to, it led me to back to myself. The messages that I would get would be like, go walk in nature or things like that, how I would interpret them from my angels. And those angel numbers, they're part of my daily life. Yeah. After the divorce happened, because I had already been in that world for a little bit, being between when he asked for the divorce and when it actually
Mhm.
finally
Sure.
happened, um, I just dug deep. I just went so deep that I meditated in the morning. I had morning rituals, and at night before I went to bed, I did daily park walks for like half hour to an hour. And so I spent about a year and a half in hermit mode where it was just my children. And to this day, I still don't talk to my ex-husband any more than I need to. And at that time, it was even less. And aside from that, it was just my kids and I worked from home. So I didn't really communicate with people all that much either. So I spent about a year and a half in that hermit mode that we talked about and really just got to look at all of my wounds, like, deeply. I journaled, like, probably at least an hour or so a day, if not more, um, and started to understand where I was giving my power away, how every single wound was impacting the decisions that I had made and how I was giving away so much of myself and how I had just lost myself really. In that
Here,
marriage, I
oh,
became
I want to stop for a second, okay? Because this is important. I want to tell the listeners what's happening here. You said just a couple paragraphs ago, you talked about your spiritual awakening, uh, becoming this knowing,
yeah,
okay? And you were starting to wake up to know yourself because you had put yourself to sleep basically,
yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
And then you started putting yourself what I call in the silence. Just, and this is I want to tell people this, you know, you don't have to go to a yoga studio and meditate, okay? You can walk, okay?
Yes,
You can sit on the couch at sunset. You can just you know, turn everything off and
Yeah.
get some quiet time. But what Louisa did then was she took action. Okay. And she's like, uh, I'm going to make, I'm going to look at my programming, whether you use those words that you picked up religiously, culturally, whatever. Then she looked at the wounds that that programming caused, and she compared that to her inner spirit. Okay. And when she did that, she realized that a lot of what she'd been brought up with was false. And she had embodied those wounds. And just like that anxiety came up, she started journaling and seeing the wounds that she caused. And then, and I'm going to put words in your mouth, but maybe you can answer this. But I believe that just the act of realizing, becoming aware of the programming and the wounds, that they dissipate by themselves just by looking at them.
Yeah.
Now, tell me if I'm wrong or right, or from your experience, not wrong or right, from your experience.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was. The moment I could identify the wound, it was like it fell away. Now, I will add to that, that there were some wounds that were so deep for me that it almost needed to take action. So I feel like I was put in situations that made me that made me have to take action with my new truth. So, an example, how much time we spend with the kids,
Right.
etc., was he wanted to do 1 month on, 1 month off. And to me, that felt like it wasn't the best thing for my kid. It wasn't about me, but
Beautiful.
it
Yeah.
did not feel like my daughter was going to benefit from that. It felt like it was going to take away from her. And I felt really strongly about that.
Okay. What I call a decision that brings life giving as opposed to non life giving.
Yes,
Right. It was
yes,
important for you to make sure that your daughter was taken care of. Life giving decision.
yep.
Okay. Go ahead.
And the universe put me right in front of him, in his face, which I had never been able to say no to that man in the, at that time, 11 or 12 years that I'd known him. There was no no. He didn't know what no sounded like in my mouth.
Mhm.
And not only did I say, no, that's not going to work for her, but then when he said, well, people do something to the effect of, people work their parenting schedules to whatever works best for them. And that moment right there for me would have been the moment that I would have said, "Yeah, you're right. This is fine." Like old Luisa would have just been like, "Yeah, you're right. We should make this work for us." And instead of doing that, I said, "You can have her every other week or I will have her full time."
Oh, wow. That's strong.
That moment in front of his face, we
Mhm.
both knew and felt in that moment that there had been a shift.
I want to stop here.
If you're waking up, questioning everything, and trying to reconnect with who you truly are, I wrote this book for you. It's a guide to remembering your divine nature, healing old conditioning, and stepping into inner sovereignty. If that resonates, check out the link below, www.atobook.com.
I want to stop here because this is important too. Okay. And I want, after I get done saying this, I want you to tell us what that shift, what that stepping into your power felt like. Okay. But look, so here's Louisa, and here's Louisa's old pattern. Okay. But now Louisa's new pattern is uh, I'm going to break these cultural norms and I'm going to come from what I know inside me. Right? So now you're putting your new pattern on. Right? But for that pattern to stick, it's got to come up against resistance,
Yeah.
right? Because the universe, consciousness, wants to see if you really believe
Uh,
what you're saying. And so it's going to put resistance against it.
yeah.
And then when you resist and you stay in your power, then your pattern strengthens.
Yeah. My pattern fell away. And I knew that. I knew that going into that situation, which is why I wasn't looking at him as I was fighting him. I was looking at him as I was fighting that pattern. I knew it at that time.
Really? You
I
knew
knew it.
that?
Yeah, because my angels
Oh, damn,
prepared me for
girlfriend,
it.
give me knuckles. Bam! That's impressive.
My
I've never
angels had prepared me for it, and that's the beauty of listening to your inner voice and knowing who you are and what you're here to do, is that I wasn't fighting him. If it was ego for me, I would not have said it that way. I would have said something that would have brought on a fight and would have made that moment and drug it out much more than it needed to. That was resolved that day. That day, in that less than 3-minute conversation, I broke that pattern. And I'll tell you what happened after that, because I realized what I had just done. I left the house and I went on to the park to cry and release, because I knew what I had just done. I knew that beyond beyond what it looked like in the 3D world, standing up to my ex-husband, I knew that I was no longer going backwards. There was no, I'm just going to say yes to keep the peace. There was no, this is about us. There was no none of that. It was about my daughter. And I had never stood up to him and made him understand the way that I wanted to, that this wasn't about me or him, about what I want, what I don't want, what works for my lifestyle, what doesn't. This was about her. And in that moment, not only did I break patterns, but I also became that mother that I basically never had. I became the mother who was like, this is what is right for my daughter.
Mhm,
And I am going to stand by this no matter what the consequences are. But I went into it knowing that there were going to be no consequences. We weren't going to go to court from that interaction. I already knew that.
mhm,
And I think that also helped me just say what I needed to say and be concise with my words and stand in my power.
mhm.
That was a really a real big turning moment, because I, um, I didn't know how to say no in general, but he was the big one. He was like the last one for me. He was like the, I need, once I can say no to this man, like, forget it.
Then
It's
it's done.
over from
I'm
here.
dangerous after that. I am liberated. I
And that's
I
where it
do
stopped.
like what you said too, is like you said, I knew that he couldn't take me to court over this little thing or something. Now that was a potential fear pattern,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But instead of staying up in your fear and making something that's not really true in your mind, you looked at it and you said, "No, that's just that's not a fear."
That's an
So that
illusion.
it's an illusion. That's
Yeah.
exactly right,
Yeah.
which helps you stay in your power,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because when we're weak and we're in fear, we can't stay inside our wholeness.
Yeah.
We either
And
freeze or we run,
yeah.
you know,
Or we
like a
shrink down to our old patterns. We go and say, yeah, let's make that work.
that is the other thing there's a term for it. There's like 4 terms. One is what is fawn? Fawn is when you stay still,
Hmm.
like a rabbit. It either runs, it stays still, you
Oh,
there's
yeah.
another one, F word, but it's basically you capitulate,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You give in, you're like little mealy mouth, you give your power away.
Yep. That
Okay.
was my master. That was my master go to, was just,
Yeah.
okay.
This was your master class.
This was
This is your master class in growing consciousness and standing in your power.
yeah. I feel, that with so many other things, but that moment I remember it because I feel like I felt at that time, if I can do that, what the fuck else can I do? That knowing, I want to say this, that knowing that he wasn't going to take me to court, that wasn't an external knowing. That wasn't like there was evidence. I didn't actually know. I knew, and part of the fear this whole time had been that I knew he had the money to take me to court and drag me through and pay for attorneys that I knew I couldn't afford. I knew he could get the best attorneys, and I knew that I was a lone man standing, and he knew that. We both knew that. And while I have a master's degree in legal studies, I can't represent myself in court. So I would need to hire someone
Mhm,
regardless. And it wasn't an external knowing. In the 3D world, I could have, and it looked like me saying no could have really put me in a tough situation where I could potentially lose the most important thing to me, which is my kids. I just knew because I had been listening to myself. I just knew there was this knowing so deep that that wasn't what was gonna happen. I think it's important to recognize, what your patterns are for that reason, because when you can see your patterns, you realize that you're not fighting your ex-husband, you're not fighting your parents, you're not fighting your best friend, you're not fighting your kids, you're fighting your own internal programming. That's what you're actually fighting, and if you notice in your life that's what it is over and over again. Over and over again. When you're seeking to be your truest self and to know yourself more deeply, you're not fighting the external world and the people per se. Those people in the external world that show up in your life, like my ex-husband, I actually thank him now. The most growth has come from from being with him.
I was
And
gonna ask you that question, if you could forgive him and thank him now.
I can thank him. I think forgiveness is a big word, but I can thank him. Um,
That's hilarious.
and I'll tell you why. I've been thinking about this a lot. You know, I can thank him because he was the person who taught me how to feel hate. I didn't know what it felt like to feel hate. And I know that sounds bad, but it's actually a beautiful thing because I now know both ends of the spectrum. I know love at its deepest form and I know hate at its deepest form. And I
And
don't,
I wanna stop here for a second, because that is one of the things that I believe, one of the reasons why we come to this earthly realm and we come out of ethereal form and come into these human bodies is so we can experience the breadth and width of God consciousness, this case, love and hate,
yeah,
okay? Kind of light and darkness,
yes,
but they're both even, but the darkness played a huge purpose here, right?
huge purpose.
It exposes,
Yeah.
it reframes, it refines.
It's shown a light in my own darkness that I refuse to acknowledge because, again, the 3D representation of everything that I refused to see about myself. I didn't want to see those things about myself. I didn't want to know that I could hate. I didn't
Mhm.
want to know that I could walk through the world and feel nothing. Like that to me, you described at that time someone like that to me, and I'd be like, oh, what kind of person is that? I didn't want to see those shadow aspects of myself. And being in this 3D relationship with him, because, after the divorce, of course, you sit back and it's like a reel playing back of your life and looking back at it all. And I was like, oh my God, like what a wimp I was in all these situations. But in reality, it was like, what were all of my shadows that I was hiding and refusing from letting come to the surface in those situations? It just so happened that he was the 3D representation of that for me. But in reality, it had actually nothing to do with him. It was just all me.
And sometimes the gurus would say that, we create our own reality, that we actually create this person, okay? So we can work through and experience ourselves, right?
I
The
believe
deepest
that now.
level.
I actually believe that I actually don't know who he is at all, that I never and it's crazy, like, you're in, like, this relationship with this person for 13 years, but I actually truly, from the bottom of my heart, believe that I don't know who he is. I created him in my mind. I created every aspect of him that I thought I knew. It was a creation of my own mind. It's important because he is the catalyst of the change that brought me back to my truth. Um, yeah, that was my awakening.
I think that we got a very good example of what awakening feels like. We don't always know exactly how it's going to get triggered, We're coming back to paying attention to our inner selves. I think the most important thing that we all need to take away from a spiritual awakening is that we're really coming back to our own power that was already there.
Yeah.
And we're using a lens to look at all the things that we've embodied here on this earth, earthly things that we've given our power away to.
Yeah.
And then when we start to realize that, then we go into the silence, because that's the only way that it's
Yes.
the space and the quiet enough to look at yourself. You don't have to, have to go live on a desert island, do this shit right in your own apartment, in your car, on your when walking to work, whatever, doesn't matter. And then you also looked at where your wounds were, right? And then you physically, like your anxiety, physically and through tears, started to release those, but with awareness. And then, bam, now you're standing in your sovereignty. I think that is like a perfect example of awakening,
Yeah.
and what it's like and what it feels like. It's not easy. It's hard.
What?
You got to break your old patterns,
You do.
which is uncomfortable. You don't know what the new space is going to look like. This new liminal space, you don't really know what it's going to look like. But when you start tuning in, you said, you had this powerful feeling, right? And you were standing in your truth,
Yeah.
without fear. I mean, I think we wrapped. I mean, that's, to me, that's complete wrap of spiritual awakening.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you went through that and defined it that way, because understanding what a spiritual awakening is, I think it can be a little less painful than maybe I experienced it, because I didn't know what I was going through. I wouldn't have labeled it this. I wouldn't have known that I was breaking patterns necessarily, By the time it got to that knowing, that big moment with my ex-husband, like, that had been a good year of me, in absolute pain, like,
Right.
just excruciating pain, almost every day.
Actually, I want to stop right here. And, we talked about this butting up against your husband, okay? Because that's where you were breaking the pattern. But one of the key ways of knowing that you need to grow your consciousness, not you, all of us, right?
Mhm.
I'm talking about the larger we, is whenever you have pain, you look at that pain and go, what in me is being triggered right now?
Yes.
Okay. And once you go, oh, and you see the falsity of whatever belief that you have, so pain is an indicator of where you need to start to do your work.
Yes.
And tell me if I'm wrong or right here, but you don't spiritually awake and then everything's perfect.
Oh, no.
No, it is like, once there's this first awareness, and it can be a great big moment, can also be a subtler moment, right? But this process of looking at all your beliefs and releasing those beliefs, and looking at your wounds and releasing those wounds. I mean, I've been doing this on and off for over 30 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long have you been doing it?
For 3 years now. A little bit over 3 years now.
Yeah.
But
And so
it never
it's a,
stops.
yeah, it's a process.
Yeah.
It's a process of, because you can't let everything go at once. Your physical body holds these energy patterns. And like the tears are a release of those energy patterns.
Yeah.
And that's, I know men shouldn't cry, right? But crying is very healthy for the body.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah. I just wanna piggyback on the crying being very healthy. Like, make myself cry at least once a week, and I know that sounds crazy, I know,
you get the
but
whip out, wham, wham.
no, but I'll watch something that I know will make me cry, or I'll
Um,
listen to something that I know will make me cry. because during that year and a half, I really learned the power of it. When I would have these really good, really deep cries, I really understood at the end, on the other side of that release, how good that felt in terms of like releasing it, letting it go. So I don't take
You're
that for
using it.
granted.
They're using it like a drug,
Like a drug.
a feel
You need
good
a hit
drug.
every week.
Okay, y'all. Thanks for stopping by. I know I love y'all. I know Luisa loves y'all too.
Yes, I do.
So we appreciate you listening. Take care of yourselves.
Thank you. And until next
Love
time.
yourself. The divine in us honors the divine in you. Namaste.
Namaste.